Okay, so today we're going to be talking about soil. So I have a bit of soil here. You can go and buy soil at the store, so you might have some now. And soil is a pretty remarkable thing. So it's made up of sort of two different components. There's two different parts to soil. There's the inorganic part, and that's basically what we were talking about when we talked about rocks and sediments and little bits like sand. That's the inorganic part of soil. It's just little bits that came off of bigger rocks like sand and mud and clay and things like that. The other half of soil is called the organic part of soil. And the organic part of soil, that basically just means it's little bits of things that used to be alive or things that are right now alive. So that could be little bits of sticks and twigs and leaves, because those used to be on a living tree, they used to be alive. And then they fall down to the floor of the forest and they're not alive anymore, and they start to break down into little bits and they become part of the soil. So soil that's really, really healthy and really strong and it's got lots of nutrients in it is usually this blackish color, and that means that it has lots of that organic matter in it. And the organic matter is great because that's where all the nutrients are, and that's what the plants need to bring up through their roots in order to get good and strong. So it's all sort of a big cycle. You have plants that are growing and they've got leaves and twigs on them, and then eventually the plants are going to die, or parts of the plants will die. They'll fall back down to the ground and they'll get broken down into little bits back into the soil, so a new plant can come along and grow, get big, and it just goes over and over like that. It's a really cool cycle. So there's some pretty important characters that are running around in the dirt, making sure that all of those things break down. So you might remember when we talked about rocks, and I said that there was a process called weathering, and that was when the big rock broke down into little bits. So in order to get the inorganic part of your soil, you need weathering to happen, rocks breaking down into bits. In order to get the organic part of your soil and to get, twigs and leaves and sticks to break down, that process is called decomposition. And decomposition happens when various different critters get involved. So there's a whole army of sort of creepy crawly creatures that are living in the dirt, and they're eating all the dead stuff, and they're pooping out all the organic part of the soil. It's really, really great. It's super important, because if not, there would just be dead stuff everywhere if these guys didn't come along and eat it and reuse it and recycle it for us. So we got a couple of those creatures here to look at today, and you're probably going to be familiar with them. If you've ever gone into the woods and flipped over a log and seen some of the creepy things under there, those things were probably mostly decomposers. And probably what they were doing was living under the log and maybe even eating the log. So a lot of these guys like to eat bits of old wood. So the first guy we got here, he's playing dead for me because he's afraid. This little guy here, yeah, maybe we'll bring him over. He is a carpenter. So we've probably all seen one of those before. And these guys are kind of cool. They look kind of like little armadillos. Here in Newfoundland, they tend to get called carpenters. Where I grew up, we called them potato bugs. I don't know why. I guess they kind of look like potatoes. But their scientific name is actually called an isopod. And they might kind of look like bugs or insects to you, but they're actually not insects. They're actually a type of crustacean. You know what else is a crustacean? A crab and a lobster. So that's what these guys are related to. And you can tell because if you look at the number of legs they have, you might know already that insects usually have 6 legs, and these guys here have 8 or 10 legs. So they are not insects, even though they kind of look like it. So these guys like to run around and eat dead stuff. So I'm going to put him back in his terrarium now because he's had enough. He's probably had enough hanging out for one day. Got a little place for him in there. He's safe. So carpenters, one of our major decomposers, and we see them pretty much all over the place. They are very, very common. Now I got another little fella here, if we can find him. He's really little. And this is a little teeny tiny snail. Found him in the compost pile this morning. And of course, he's got a shell to hide in, so he's not going to come out right now. But I think we kind of know what a snail looks like, right? Probably seen one before. Snails are pretty cool creatures. So snails will also eat plants while they're still alive. So sometimes snails can be kind of annoying if you have them in your garden. But when you get them in your compost heap, they're great because they're eating a bunch of dead stuff. And snails are pretty cool creatures. They're part of a group of creatures that are called mollusks. They're mostly squishy creatures. Sometimes they have shells. And the cool thing about mollusks is they have tentacles. So if you've ever heard of an octopus or a squid, that's a mollusk too, and they've got lots of tentacles. But our little snail has tentacles too, and he's sticking them out here. So his two top tentacles have eyes on the end of them. Can you see his little tentacles? And then he's got two bottom tentacles that look like they come out of maybe his chin. And those are his little feeler tentacles. So the top ones he can see with, and the bottom ones he can feel stuff with. And he does have a mouth. He's got a really strong mouth, actually, that he can use to sort of make holes in things. But that's more sort of on the underside there. So you can see those little tentacles sticking out. That's how he's checking out the world around him. And this guy's actually not too scared. He's actually coming out for a little walk. That's pretty good. Yeah, and slugs are also pretty big on eating dead stuff. So snails and slugs are good things to find in your compost heap. They're doing good work in there. All right, we'll put you back in the terrarium too. Thank you for coming out to see us. All right, and we'll grab the star of the show. We can find one. Oh, hard to grab. And of course, we could not talk about soil and compost without talking about our earthworms. Earthworms are part of a group of animals called annelids. Annelid means little ring because they got little rings all around their bodies. Usually a little one there. And they don't really like being out in the light too much, so we won't keep them out for too long. You can see he's trying to figure out, oh my God, where can I go? I got to get back into the dark. This isn't right. They definitely like to stay where it's nice and dark and damp. You can see they're a little bit slimy, so they have to stay wet. And these guys are really, really good at eating dead stuff. So they are probably the most productive soil producers. A lot of what we're seeing when we see soil is worm poop. Or maybe the more proper word for it is worm casings, but it's basically poop. And so they're eating all of the dead stuff they find. And the nice thing about worms like this guy is, you know, our carpenters and our snails, they like to eat dead plants, but these guys will eat all sorts of dead stuff. So any dead thing that falls to the floor, these guys are happy to sort of check it out and see if they want to eat it. So that's really, really handy. So these guys here are not the ones that you necessarily find wild, you know, when it rains and all the worms seem to come up out of the ground. That's not really these guys here. We actually went out and bought these guys special for our composter because these guys are just so good at making compost. And the ones that you find outside are also, you know, they're pretty good at eating dead stuff, but if you want to have a composter inside your house, you need to go and get these guys specially from the worm farm out in Bay Bulls. So they're a little bit different from the ones that you can pick up on the ground, but the same type of thing. They're still worms, they're still annelids, and they're still eating dead stuff. So we'll put him back now. He's had enough of this daylight foolishness. So these guys all came from the composter. So I have a composter inside my house with the red wiggler worms in it, and I have a composter outside my house where I find all sorts of other critters like snails and carpenters. So why do I have a composter? What's that all about? Well, I like to grow vegetables and flowers and gardens, and I really like the soil there to be nice and strong and healthy because that makes my vegetables grow healthy, and that means I'm more healthy because I'm eating healthy vegetables. It's a really nice little cycle. It also means that I produce all sorts of scraps in my kitchen and I can recycle them instead of having to throw them in the garbage. So I've set up a little composter system in my house and outside my house. And I'll tell you a little bit about that now if it's something you might be interested in, because it's got all those benefits. Reducing the waste that you put in the garbage, making cool soil, attracting cool critters to your backyard that you can then go poke around your compost pile and find. It's always exciting to find a little tiny snail, I think. So I'll give you a couple of tips on how you could start your own composter if you want. I'm going to talk to you mostly about doing an outdoor composter because you don't have to buy any critters for that one. You just stick it outside and you wait for all the critters to come and find it. If you really do want to do an indoor one, that would be like a worm composter. Then you would have to order the worms from the worm farm in Bay Bulls or from somewhere else, and that would be a little bit more complicated. So we won't get into that one today. We'll just talk about the outdoor composter. But it is getting to be that time of year that, you know, you can go outside, your composter's not going to be frozen solid, you know, lots of sunlight. So it's a good time to start your outdoor composter anyway. Before I do that, are there any questions on the decomposers and the critters that we looked at?
No, we don't have any questions so far.
Okay, great. So if you wanted to start a composter yourself, first things first, you're going to have to collect a bunch of scraps, and these are going to be dead bits of plants for the most part. So a lot of the things you eat are plants. And I have an example here from my own composter this morning. Yes, I did carry my compost to work this morning. So here's a couple of examples of things that would be good stuff to put into your composter. So banana peels are really good, little bits of fruits like apple cores. This was kind of the gross end of cucumber. So this is a piece of carrot that fell on the floor while I was making my lunch, so I'm just gonna toss it in there. The ends of some asparagus. Tea bags are really good. So inside the tea bags are like little leaves. That's what tea is basically. And then the outside of the bag is made from paper, and paper will decompose in a composter, so that's fine. These are little bits of some mushrooms, some saddled potato peels. And these are not technically plants. This is eggshell, but you can put your eggshells in the composter if you break them up a little bit. And what you're going to find is that the eggshells have things like calcium in them. So they're actually going to add to the inorganic part of your compost. So this stuff here is all adding to the organic part. It's decomposing, critters are eating it. This is actually adding to the inorganic part by putting a couple of nutrients back into your soil. But either way, this stuff is all going to make your soil nice and healthy, and it's going to make your plants grow really well, and it's going to make your vegetables that much healthier when you go to eat them. So you're going to need to start collecting things like this, putting them aside. Now you don't want to mix in things that are like milk or cheese or anything like that, anything that we would call dairy products. You don't really want to put any meat in here. I don't recommend because meat tends to bring in the bigger decomposers. So there are also like crows and ravens are decomposers, rats are decomposers, anything that will come along and sort of scavenge dead things are decomposers. And you probably don't want a bunch of ravens picking through your composter because they can make a bit of a mess, and they can also eat your decomposers. They might get in there and eat some of your worms. You don't want that. So you want to just pick the stuff that your little decomposers want, like your worms and your carpenters and your snails, because those are the kinds that you want in your backyard. They're not going to make a whole lot of mess. You might also find that things like meats and cheese start to stink a little bit. This stuff here doesn't really stink that bad. I mean, it smells a little bit like onion. So if you don't like the smell of onion, I guess it does stink. But this stuff, as it's decomposing, doesn't really give off much of a smell. So people worry about having a composter in the backyard. Oh, it'll be stinky. Oh, there'll be a bunch of animals. That can be avoided as long as you really stick to things that used to be plants. Now, another thing you have to keep in mind is normally your decomposers are out in the woods and they're eating things like twigs and dead leaves. So you have to make sure you keep your composter a little bit in balance by putting that type of stuff in as well. So you can just find dead leaves that fell around your property in the fall. Maybe if you mow the lawn and you have little bits of grass from that, you can use that. You can also use things like old eggshell containers, because those are made actually of wood, just like twigs. So that's the kind of thing that will balance out your composter. So make sure you get a good amount of things that are also made of wood and put that in as well. Maybe some old twigs. So as you're sort of cleaning up your yard, you might come upon sort of dead plant bits, and those would be really great things to throw in along with all the stuff that was in your kitchen. So what is your composter going to look like? Well, it could be as simple as like a pile in your yard. You could pick a corner of your yard where you don't go to very often. You could make your pile of, you could put, your banana peels and everything in, and then cover them with another pile of leaves, and you could just leave it to do its thing. All you would really have to do is go in once in a while and stir it around, make sure lots of oxygen gets in there, because your decomposers have to breathe. If you wanted to be a little more fancy and you wanted to kind of keep your composter more contained and you didn't want to worry about it blowing away, I recommend giving something like a milk crate a try. So a milk crate is really great because it's going to survive wind and weather and rain. It's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to break. But it's got lots of holes in it. So that means oxygen can get in and your decomposers can breathe and your decomposers can get in. So everything is sitting in the corner of your yard, and there's holes in the bottom for the worms to come in. There's holes in the side for the carpenters to crawl in and the snails to crawl in. There's lots of room here. So it's kind of contained. You got everything together, but there's still things flowing in and out. And then you don't have to do very much work. You know, nature's doing most of the work for you. It's sending the decomposers your way. They're going in, they're eating stuff, and they're pooping out soil. So it's a pretty good deal. Now I did mention before that you have to stir it around regardless if it's a pile or a thing. You just got to make sure that your decomposers have lots of energy. And so they're going to get lots of energy by having lots of oxygen. They're going to get pretty slow and sluggish if they run out of oxygen inside. Another thing that might happen if there's no oxygen on the inside, some of the decomposers are actually tiny microorganisms that you can't see. And when there's lots of oxygen, the microorganisms that are working away don't make much stink. When there's not a lot of oxygen, different microorganisms start to take over and they can also produce a bit of stink. So we don't want our composter to smell bad. We just want it to produce good soil. So those are just a couple of tips to make sure that it's doing what it's got to do and it's not making everything smell terrible. Does anyone have any questions about composting? There's a lot of information coming at you all at once.
We have a composter in our backyard.
Cool.
Do you have to use those containers? Can you use like Tupperware bins and put holes in them?
Yeah, you can use all sorts of different things. This is just nice and easy. It's already there. It's already got holes in it. Simple. But you could go out and you could get a big tub and you could put holes in it. You could even get just like a big cardboard box because the cardboard box will also decompose over time. So for one season, it will kind of hold things there. And then over the winter, it will start to decompose. And then you could put a new cardboard box down. There's lots of different things you can come up with. Some people build really cool composters. They use wires and they use pallets, and I've seen them made of bricks. So you can get pretty fancy with it. There's lots of ways to do it, but this is a nice kind of simple way to start. If you can get yourself some sort of crate or container with some holes in it, and that'll get you started, and then you can start really, you know, experimenting and figuring out how you want it to look.
I also have a question on watermelon. Can watermelon go in it?
Yep.
Like the
Yep.
peels?
Yep, that would be perfect. Right on. Okay, so that is making some soil. There's some tips on how to do that. Now, what are we going to do with that soil? Well, we are going to plant some things. So I'm going to give you my sort of strategy for how I get seeds to start. Now, this doesn't work for everything because I haven't been very successful yet growing my bell peppers. So maybe this will work for you, maybe it won't, but this is how I get my tomatoes to grow and how I get my cabbage to grow and all sorts of things like that. So you can give it a try. I like to start them off in old egg cartons. So as I mentioned, these will decompose. So that means the little plant can start growing in here or in here. And then once it's ready for me to move it to another pot or to move it outside, I can just sort of cut it out and put the little egg carton right in the ground and it will start to decompose and the plant can just keep growing and it'll get a little bit of nutrient as this decomposes. So I like to start them in these. I just find it easier. Then you don't have to dig it out and move it. You just cut it and transplant it. I also find that these fit really well inside freezer bags. And I like to put mine inside freezer bags for a couple of days because it acts like a little greenhouse. So it gets nice and warm in there. As the sun comes in, it stays nice and damp in there. And the seedlings, you know, it just gives them a nice, easy start to life if they're kind of warm and damp as they get going. And then you can take them out of the freezer bag after a week and kind of get them used to the real world. So if you want to follow along with how I do my seeds, first, I'm going to cut it up sort of into quarters. So I'm going to cut this top off. And then I'm going to cut it in half and in half. And it's all right, you know, it looks a little bit messy because it's only going to be sitting out for a couple weeks and then it's going to get buried somewhere and it'll decompose. Another nice thing about egg cartons is that you can write right on them. So if you're starting lots of seeds at once, you won't forget which ones they are. So I'm going to start pumpkins today. So I can write pumpkin right on here. And then when the little sprout comes out, if I'm like, oh, I don't remember what that was, I have written it down. Some years I completely forget to do that, and I don't know what kind of plants I've got until like July, which is also kind of fun. All right. There we go. So I got some little places to start seeds there. And then I like to use this as like a little tray underneath, because that just keeps things from being too messy when I go to water them. So I like to cut this one in half too. So that makes 2 little seed trays, just like that. Now, I have got some soil from the store to get us going. And you can get special seed starting soil, and that's great. That's just going to put your seeds that much further ahead. They're that much more likely to sprout. But regular soil will also work for a lot of different seeds, so you can give that one a go if that's what you got. Don't worry about going out and getting anything fancy. I can't remember the last time I bought that special seed soil. Maybe that's why I can't get my peppers to start. Actually, my peppers will grow inside my composter because it gets really warm in the composter with all those decomposers doing their thing. It gets nice and warm in there. And as soon as I bring the seedlings out of the composter, gone. That's the only place they want to grow. All right, so now we'll fill up all of our little cups with soil. And you don't need too much soil. Try not to have it overflowing everywhere and making a big mess, but this is going to be the first little place that your seed lives, so it should be nice. And of course, seeds have nutrients inside them to get them started. But then once they've germinated or sprouted and the green parts have started coming out of the seeds, then they need to start living on the nutrients in the soil. So that's why it's important. They will sprout without any soil around them, but once they've sprouted, get them into soil, because now they're going to start trying to get those nutrients out of it. All right, so there we go. Got some soil in that one. Soil in this one. This bag of soil is a bit old, so it's gotten a bit clumpy. Let's break that up. That's another really great thing that our worms do when they move through the soil, is they leave behind little tunnels and trails. They break up clumps, and that's great because lots of the decomposers living in the soil need air to breathe. So if there's holes in the soil, the air can get down and the decomposers can do their thing. So worms are pretty great. You might not realize it because they don't look like much, but they are pretty busy. Okay, break up these clumps. Okay, well, I wrote pumpkin on the thing, so I think I'm committed to pumpkin for now. So on the back, it will tell you how deep to put your seed. Most of the time, it's about 1/4 of an inch or about 6 millimeters. You don't have to worry too much about that being super specific. You just essentially don't want to stick it right down at the very bottom. It only needs a little bit of soil on top of it. The pumpkins go a little bit deeper. They go about 1 inch deep. But for the most part, you just don't want your seeds to have to go too far before they find the light, because of course plants really need the light to start growing, right? Okay, so I'll stick my pumpkins down a little bit more. And pumpkins like to be on their side, I'm told, in order to grow. Maybe that's an old wives' tale, but I'm going to try it. Why not? All right, so I'll stick it in there. And you might find that you can just, your soil's loose, you can just kind of stick the seed in. Or you might find that when you go to stick the seed in, it's not quite going down. Just leave it and then sprinkle a little bit more soil over top. Either one of those is fine. Your soil might be kind of clumpy like mine. Okay. And now I mentioned during my first video that you might want to try pumpkins, zucchinis, cauliflower, broccoli, Swiss chard. Again, I just said those because this is kind of the time to start those ones based on how long it takes them to grow and start producing vegetables. Things like tomatoes, you usually start those a little bit earlier because they need to grow a little longer. Things like peppers, start them a little earlier. And then things like beans, you start them a little later. So it's just sort of about how long it takes that plant to grow, which is why I was suggesting, you know, that you do pumpkins now. This is when generally you start your pumpkins, but you do have a little bit of wiggle room on either side of that. Usually you have about a week to 2 weeks of wiggle room to decide what kind of things you're going to plant. So I also mentioned at the start that some things don't really like to start as seedlings indoors and then get moved outdoors. So I'm going to start my carrots and my onions probably on Monday, and I'm just going to put them right outside because they don't really like to move from inside to outside. Beans don't really like to move, so I'll wait and start them next month outside because that's just what they would prefer. And that gives them my best chance of them growing properly. So once you got your seeds in there, you're gonna wanna kind of douse them with water. So you kind of activate those seeds and wake them up again and let them know like, hey, it's safe to start growing now. And you do that by giving them lots and lots of water. Now you may think that growing 12 pumpkins is too many pumpkins, and there are 12 holes here. That might be true. But I find when you're starting your seeds, you never really know which one of them is gonna grow. So I usually go for 12, and then maybe 8 of them pop up as sprouts, and then maybe 4 of them are actually good plants that will grow outside. Maybe 2 of them actually give you a pumpkin. So it's a lot of kind of trial and error and just kind of doing your best. So you might put a bunch of seeds in here, but you're not really expecting all of those to grow and give you your vegetables. So I don't mind putting out 12 pumpkin seeds because I really don't think I'm going to end up with 12 pumpkin plants taking over my backyard. Just not the way it's going to go. Eventually, some of these guys are just not going to make it. And that's all right. Called a contingency plan. All right, so all mine are in there. I'm going to soak them with some water. If I got my sprayer here. Alrighty. And then as I mentioned, I really like to start my seeds inside these freezer bags. So these, you can see this one is even still quite wet from the last seeds that were in it. So you can just slide these in, they fit perfectly, and you can seal them up. And now when you sit this in a nice sunny area, it's gonna get nice and warm in here. This black soil is really gonna attract the sun, it's gonna heat up, and that seeds like to be really warm. That gives them another clue that, oh, it's time for me to go, it's time for me to start growing. But it won't cause all of your water to disappear because as the water evaporates out of the soil, it kind of gets stuck on the plastic bag and it stays nice and damp in here. So the seeds are damp, they're warm, they're pretty happy, and they start to sprout. And I think between sort of 4 and 7 days, you'll start to really see them come out and grow their first couple leaves and start to take off. So if you set your seed tray like that in a nice sunny window where it gets a good amount of sun maybe in the morning, I think you'll start to see some results. And then you're probably going to want to take them out of the bag after about maybe a week once they've really started to grow and you can start to see their leaves. And then before you actually move them outside ultimately, so maybe you decide, you know, June 25th, you're gonna plant everything outside. For a couple of days before June 25th, just put them outside just during the day, get them used to how cold it is outside, get them used to the wind. You don't want to have a nice, you know, life living inside where it's very calm and warm, and then all of a sudden you just chuck them outside and they have no way to adapt to it. So if you give them a couple of days to sit outside and kind of get used to it and figure out what it's like and bring them in at night, then they'll probably do a little bit better when you get them to the garden. Anybody have any questions about getting seeds to sprout?
What about the watering part? I've never heard that part.
Which part?
What about the watering? Like, how do you water them?
Oh, I usually spray mine while they're still little plants because they don't have very strong roots yet. So you don't want to like give them a big dump of water and totally dislodge them. The roots are really tiny and they're not very strong at holding them in place. So I usually just spray them so that they can sort of stay nice and damp, but you don't have to worry about them getting buffeted around or broken. And when it comes to seedlings, I spray them at least twice a day. First thing in the morning, because where I have them in the morning, it's really bright and they're going to get lots of sun and I don't want them to roast in the sun. So I'll do it first thing in the morning and then I'll usually do it again in the afternoon just to make sure. You really, I mean, they're baby plants. You really got to take care of them. You really got to think about them. You can't really throw them out there in the world and just expect them to make it. You really have to nurture them. So I make sure to spray them. I mean, you can feel the soil is starting to get kind of dry and then, you know, they're probably hungry. They're probably ready for another spray.
Do you spray them? Do you spray them when you got them buried now?
Yep. Yep, I just sprayed them before putting them in here.
So
Yeah, give them a good
Madison,
spray right away.
we have someone else who has raised their hand.
Okay.
He can go ahead with his question.
All right.
Can't remember.
Oh no. That's all right. All right, anybody else?
No one else.
Okay.
Oh, wait, sorry. We've got a text question. What are the steps after the planted seeds are in the bag?
Okay, so once they're in the bag, they're going to sprout in about 5 to 7 days-ish. It really depends on what kind of plant that you've put in there. So some of them will sprout a little faster. Once they start, they're going to eventually kind of start to hit the top of the bag there. They're just going to get too tall. At that point, I take them out of the bag altogether, but make sure you're spraying them at least twice a day because they got used to this nice damp, you know, greenhouse that they were living in. So you want to keep them nice and moist. And once the time has come that they're safe to go outside, you're not going to get any more frost to come along and kill them. And that's really in Newfoundland not until mid-June. Then you can sort of cut each individual cup of the egg carton and you can just put that right in the soil wherever it is they're going to go. So for some of us, we have you know, big beds in the backyard that they can go in. That's great. Other people grow things in like containers, big buckets. That's great too. Wherever you're going to put them, just kind of snip them out of this container and put them in that soil in the bigger container. So you can grow all sorts of things in containers. Wouldn't recommend it for pumpkins, but if you're doing cucumbers, you can grow those in a container. You just got to give them something to grow up because they like to grow as a vine. You can do tomatoes in a container, broccoli, cauliflower, Swiss chard, all sorts of stuff.
When do the lids go on?
When do the
Lids go on.
the lids? Oh, the little, like the lid to the, like this thing? Yeah, I just leave that underneath because I find when you cut the side off here, you leave a little hole, and when you're watering them, the water and the soil will start dripping out this hole. So I just stick it on the bottom like that because it's nice and high on this side. Now it's nice and high on this side. You don't have to worry about anything falling out. So that's all I use the lids for. You could, if you wanted to, put the lid on for a couple of days, but I find that the plastic bag does a good enough job of keeping the heat in, so you don't really have to worry about it. You can stick it underneath. And it's just a little stronger. Right on. All right. So that's our questions. Cool.
Yeah, I don't see any other hands up. No other text questions have come in.
Okay. Cool. All right, guys. Well, thanks so much for joining in and following along. Hopefully you guys will be able to get some seeds to sprout. That would be very, very cool. If you have a little garden set up going, you should take a picture and send it to me. I'd love to see it. It would be very exciting. And yeah, and same if you want to share your composter with me. I love it. I love seeing how people build their composters. It's really cool. So next week, I'm completely blanking on what we are doing. But we will be back next week with the Discovery Lab, and I will put the video out on YouTube on Tuesday, so you will definitely know ahead of time what it is. Thank you guys so much for joining me. See ya.
Yeah.